So this evening we are going to be talking about Leave the World Behind. This is a book by Rumaan Alam. I have to apologise to Chaya on camera here because I spilt a lot of coffee on her copy, but there you go, such is life.
Doesn't matter.
I hope you forgive me. It's funny, I sometimes find it, I've seen reviews where people have said, sum this book up in 5 words, in a word, what would you say about this book? And actually, with this one, I really can describe it in 1 word, because for me, the word that always pops into my head when I think about this is unnerving. And
I did warn you.
It was completely and utterly unnerving to me. I finished it yesterday, so it's very much fresh in my mind, but I have no doubt that I will continue thinking about it in some shape or form for a while to come.
I read it a while ago. I read it because it was Geordie's book club #1 book of 2020, which caused a lot of discussion in the comments when he announced his book pick. Geordie's book club is a big book club in America, and there were some people who were like, this book is the best book I've ever read, and there were other people that were like, are you kidding? And I think that's really brilliant when a book is able to divide people and polarize people so massively. This book in a lockdown is such a scary read. So the premise, everyone that doesn't know, and I'm not going to do any spoilers because we do think it's a brilliant read, is a family that are on holiday and something happens. I literally don't think I can put it any wider.
Well, they're in the middle of nowhere.
Without giving it away.
It's a husband and wife and their 2 children who are, I think, 15 and 12. And they head out for a vacation in the middle of nowhere in Long Island, I think.
Small town, yeah.
Small town, there's nothing around. And they found the house on Airbnb. And essentially in the advert it said that this is somewhere you come to leave the world behind. And you really do, because it's so isolated where they are. They have terrible phone signal. And I think that's a huge part of this book. I mean, there are many themes to this. I mean, when we describe it, it sounds relatively simple, but actually the story is
very layered
in terms of what happens, but there are many themes here. It touches on race in a big way, our reliance on technology. For me, one of the key aspects was looking at these 2 parents, Clay and Amanda, who are in their early 40s. Amanda is in advertising and Clay's a professor. He has tenure, he reviews books sometimes. But what you see with these parents is, I mean, you really feel like they don't have much of a clue, as in terms of handling what happens. And I know that, you know, I'm a parent of relatively young children, and I often sort of balk at the responsibility that I have, thinking, how am I the parent? And that really resonated with me in the book, because you see that they feel that as well in many ways during what happens to them and their children in this very unnerving tale, which, before I forget, I believe is being adapted on Netflix, and it will be starring Denzel Washington and Julia Roberts, which is just a very
Julia
to know. Yeah.
Julia, oh my god.
Yeah, okay. I think it'll be amazing actually on TV.
This book, okay, there is some sort of global event. That's all I'm going to say. Now, when they go to this home, I think, Sophie, they kind of don't know what they're doing when it all hits the fan, but then no one does. And the reliance on technology bit, like, I want everyone to stop and think, if their televisions and phones didn't work, what would you do? My immediate thought,
in the middle of nowhere.
Right. So my immediate thought was, if this happened now, and that's what I was thinking the whole way through this book, what if this happens? I'm going to go to my mother's house. She's got a chest full of food. That's where I'm staying. there were so many complexities to this book, because the owners, I think we can say the owners of this home, come back, and there's
in the middle of the night.
In the middle of the night, and there's this discussion because their reaction to them is so indicative of these kind of like underlying nuanced views on race and how they interact with each other in this microcosm of a house. And there's just, and also that it makes you think about happiness and marriage and what's important in life and what would you do if you were in this kind of dystopian world. And I think it is a page turner because you must know what happens. And I think
it's the pace is ridiculous, and that's also this sort of sense of, I guess, panic in some ways. I'm not sure exactly what the word is, but that's how I felt. It's heightened because, you know, you've got these 6 central characters, the 2 couples, and then the 2 kids, Archie and Rose, and you actually hear, it's as if you're inside each of their heads, so you feel so involved and immersed. You hear the story from each of their perspectives, so that really draws you in as a reader. And I have to say, I really don't want to give any spoilers away, but what I will say is this, is that ever since I have been quite young, there has been this sort of recurring nightmare, I'll call it, that I have had. And this happens in the book. So when this happens, and interestingly, if my mum is watching this, she will know, because she has also had this nightmare, and you might have too, because apparently it's not uncommon. And
nightmare.
There's this feeling, it's like a thing, apparently it's not an uncommon thing, but it's really, I mean, it just makes me shudder thinking about it. That's all I'll say.
I have to say, this book really stayed with me. It really, really made an impact. I think the writing is excellent. There are times of sheer wit. It's very contemporary. You can imagine this happening. In fact, we're basically, well, we're not living in it, but we're living in a...
It basically is happening to an extent.
So it's incredibly powerful. But I think the brilliance lies within the switching of perspectives, because I don't know if any of the characters are massively likable. I think it's just genuinely honest, and it's a real
good or bad. It's this whole grey area, and you see their flaws, but you also understand why they're doing what they're doing, or why they're not saying what they're not saying. And you see the reasoning behind it. Brilliant. So
it should be a lot longer with what it achieves, don't you think, Sophie? Because I really connected with these characters, not in a way that I genuinely cared about them, but I understood them. Like, I felt like I knew who they were.
I agree. I do think this probably won't be for everybody, but if you fall into the camp, I mean, I can't say I enjoyed it, because enjoy is the wrong word. No, but if it is for you, I think you'll really be blown away by...
You know what? Maybe something like 3 Hours by Rosamund Lipton, which we loved, because there was so much to unpack there. I think it's a fast-paced thriller which is very, very true to life, but it's also very frightening, because
it's you. It really could.
It could be
my
you.
nightmare.
I think it's everyone's nightmare, Sophie. I'm not gonna lie, it really made me think though, like, what would I do if nothing worked? And there's a scene, I think we can say about this, there's a scene when someone is driving somewhere to obtain assistance, and like the sat nav doesn't work in the phone. Like, where do you go? I think obviously they're trapped somewhere they don't know, and if this happened when you were at home, you would know your whereabouts. I think it'd be a lot less disconcerting, maybe. But the reliance on technology and the way that we interact with each other and the morality is a big element of this. But I think it's a really highly recommended read for us, because it's such a good distraction.
Yes, that's for sure. It really is.